Mm. All right. I would like to welcome everyone who's joining us right now. And we are just giving it a couple of minutes to see who else is going to hop in this evening. And if you are comfortable with putting your location in the chat, saying hello. And we will get started in just a couple of moments with a few of our announcements, and then I will do a brief introduction, and then we will hop in to tonight's presentation. And then for everyone who's either joining and might have to leave early or not sure what there's some storms rolling through the state right now. So if you are worried that you're going to lose some internet, just be rest assured that we are recording tonight's presentation and that it will go out to everyone in an email within the next couple of days. See a Chesterfield in here. Tiffany's from Lenexa. Regan from Hampton and Central North Carolina. Thank you. All right, we are at about 5 minutes after, and so I will start by keeping an eye on the waiting room as people are entering and by giving everyone a quick introduction to the Virginia End of Life Doula Collective. We are just now getting ready to open for membership for the collective. So if you have been to a previous webinar and you are on the wait list, you should be hearing from us soon if you have not already. Make sure to check those spam boxes and add us to your white list. We are opening up for membership, and we are looking forward to having doula members as well as business and organization members. Um, Tonight is very, very special for everyone involved. Tonight is our very last open and free to the public webinar. And so this recording will go out in an email link to everyone who is registered. And it will be up and free for everyone to watch on our YouTube channel. From here on out, our webinars will be included in the annual membership to the Virginia End of Life Doula Collective, along with some additional benefits that people can read about on our website. I will make sure to put that link in the chat. So those will be included as well as things like our regional meetups. And then if you are a guest this evening or you are a guest that has registered and are watching this recording, you will still be able to join us for our upcoming webinars. There will just be a requested donation amount to go towards the expenses that go with putting all of these on. And so if you have any questions about that, go ahead and pop those into the chat as we're going along this evening. I will be keeping an eye on chat for questions or comments about tonight's presentation. I am very, very delighted to have Tiffany Callis here with us this evening. Tiffany and I met on Alignable, which I've already mentioned to a couple of people before. It truly is a wonderful opportunity to network and find people that maybe share the same mission or vision as you. You do not have to pay for an account if you do not want to. I don't. And this was an opportunity. Tiffany lives very close to me, and it gave us an opportunity to dive into something that I really didn't know a lot about. I do not want to steal any more of her precious time this evening, so I would like to pass it over to Tiffany and allow her to tell you a little bit about herself and to take over tonight's presentation.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, this is one of my favorite topics, near and dear to my heart, psychedelic medicine, also known as entheogens. And I'll discuss more about that as we go along. Do you mind going to the next slide? And I apologize, I'm having I'm having Crystal do my slides because I'm not very technological. I'm not great at technology. Is that the first one or is that? Oh, yes. So just to introduce myself and how did I kind of get into psychedelic medicine and entheogenic medicine, really was through my nursing career. I have been a nurse for 27 years. You can see me in those pink scrubs as a baby nurse in the NICU at CHKD. And that is where I started. And still, babies hold a special place in my heart. I still do work with them. But I also worked in community health with low income pregnant moms. I became a birth doula. And I gave immunizations. As you can see, I love to have funny shirts. So um, uh, that does say, I will stab you. And I did wear that on the days that I would give immunizations to kids at Halloween time. And they absolutely loved it. And then I did make it through COVID and through the pandemic as a community health nurse up in DC area. And as you can see, it drove me a little crazy um, with the things that we had to do. But, you know, that's the go with the flow kind of thing. And most importantly, how did I get here? Where I say is the cross section of where science and spirituality meet. It actually was when I was doing that community health job. And as with any job, you take trainings, right? And I was working with a lot of trauma patients who had a lot of early trauma in their lives, and working with the mothers of understanding the trauma that they had been through and how it affects the children. And we did a training called the ACE training about, it's early events in childhood that predict your adult life. And if you have depression, if you have anxiety, if you have a higher risk of substance abuse, there's actually a score. It's called the ACE score that you can go and take for yourself. And it will predict really your chances of depression or anxiety or alcoholism or substance abuse. And I did the test. And, you know, growing up in the 80s, we were not ones to go to therapy. And and so when I did the test and I looked at it and I was like, oh my goodness, I have trauma? What? And it made me start to think about myself as a patient or as, you know, someone who doesn't just have to help people, but maybe I need help too. And maybe I need to go to therapy and start to evaluate myself. And so I did realize that I was using substances really from teenage years. It began with food, and then, as you know, trauma, layers of trauma, which is really what the ACE score shows you. Um, you know, sorry, let me gather my thoughts as I talk about this. But the ACE score shows you that. And as you start to delve into yourself, that's really where I discovered that I had addictions to things, and that I actually did have trauma. And so I started to go and get therapy for myself. And that took me down the path of um, learning about cannabis as a gateway out of opioid addiction, which is how I was self-medicating before I went to therapy, before I started to, learn about myself and really heal things. And cannabis is actually a psychedelic medicine. And the more I started to educate myself and learn about it, the more that it was taking me into psychedelic medicine and learning about that. And so, as you can see in the photo of me at Johns Hopkins, I was lucky enough to live up there and be able to be connected to the psychedelic education department at Johns Hopkins. That photo is actually with Bill Richards, who has been doing this type of work for a really long time. He and his son actually opened or have facilitated a beautiful center in Rockville, Maryland for end of life. And they are doing a lot of studies there for end of life anxiety and psychedelic medicines. So they are doing studies with MDMA. They are doing studies with psilocybin, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But once I started healing myself and getting more interested, I got connected to a lot of different people. I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And I was lucky enough after reading that book to be able to take a training actually with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who is in one of the photos of me, with him and my wonderful mentor, Dr. Phil Wolfson, who does a lot of work with ketamine. And then, of course, I'm a member of the organization of psychedelic and entheogenic nurses, where we discuss and learn and educate each other on, the movement of psychedelics and how they can help people heal. And so, do you mind going to the next slide? So this is just a little bit more about me, and I don't want this to be all about me, but I can really tell a good story about psychedelics from my point of view, because we can't share really anyone's experience other than our own. But the top left 4 photos are me before I started doing my healing work. You never caught me out partying without a drink in my hand. Food was a constant comfort. Drinks were a comfort. Narcotics, anything to escape the pain of all the things that I did not want to face, because we don't go to therapy in the 80s. And so when I finally embraced going to therapy, going to substance abuse therapy, and doing all of those things, I finally was discovering other ways of being, other ways of living, doing a 12-step program and connecting to other people who had substance abuse disorder was really important, but there was always something missing for me. And that was when I really was learning about the studies at Johns Hopkins for psilocybin mushrooms and depression. And I knew. I was like, this, it calls to me. I read the studies and I knew that this is something that I am missing in my life. And when you use an entheogen, it really is igniting like and I'll get to that slide in a minute, a spirituality that may be missing. When they talk in the 12-step program about a higher power, I didn't understand that. I couldn't connect to it because I was angry. I was angry at the world, and I never discussed it in therapy. I was also angry. So part of my story, and you'll see, my kids do not like to be in photos. So I want to honor that. There's only 2 photos there, but they are okay with me sharing the story that my son came out and is transgender. And he came out at age 14. So that was what, 5 years ago? And I came from a family that did not approve and didn't understand. And this was around the time that I was learning about psychedelics. And I was angry at God because my family is very religious and set in their understanding of what is right or wrong. And there was a disconnect for me there because I love my child and I support them and approve of them no matter what. And I could not wrap my head around religion or God disapproving of my child. And so, of course, I was angry. And what I will say about my experience when I finally did decide to go and receive the medicine, that it opened up my brain from being stuck in understanding that it's going to be okay. Like, I don't have to worry about those things. I don't have to worry about my family not approving of my son because I love my son. And I know that in spirituality and my beliefs, it's okay. And he is loved and I am loved, and that really is the message that you get from psychedelic medicine and how it can help you move forward and not be stuck in the loop of, oh, we're being judged, oh, who am I going to go to now? I don't have family to support me in this transition with my son. So as you can see, the other pictures are kind of me after my awakening of things are going to be better and we can go and do things. And now I go to Pride events and I'm really involved with the Free Mom Hugs movement. And, my kids are happy and joyful and loved and supported. And, I really am appreciative of psychedelic medicines for helping support us through that transition and helping me to be a better mother. who's not addicted, who's not so wrapped up in her own pain that she can show up. So those are my kids. And the other thing that happened out of this is that I do wildlife rescue now. Like nature is my higher, what in the 12 steps of what they say, who is your higher power? Well, for me, it's nature. And that is where I connect. And so I do wildlife rescue now, and I love it. Can you go to the next slide? So, of course, I have to put a disclaimer, and we will discuss the legalities of psychedelic medicines. As a nurse, I cannot condone or promote the use of psychedelic medicines. This is all educational. My experiences are subjective, only to me. I will talk about the medicines, but I always explain that anyone who is making a decision to use a psychedelic medicine, that not only do they understand the laws and legalities of, taking the medicine, but also understanding the medicine and having somebody walk them through and guide them if they are going to take it. I don't recommend anybody just go out and buy themselves some mushrooms and take them, and not have a understanding of what these medicines do. I also like to say that these medicines are not for everyone. There are a lot of things that would prevent somebody from being able to take psychedelic medicines. So really use caution, is what I say to people. And of course, when people are going to go do these studies, and I'll talk more about what studies are available that people can apply for. You're going to be guided, you're going to be held when you go through that process. It is legal to do that through a study. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so not all psychedelics are Schedule 1. But the ones that are Schedule 1 that I am going to talk about today are going to be psilocybin, MDMA. Those two medicines are still Schedule 1. And so that means that it is illegal to have them. There are places like Washington, D.C. that have decriminalized mushrooms. And what that means is that it's just not on the top of police's, of their, oh, we're going to go bust somebody because they have psychedelic medicine. That's all that means. It does still mean that if you have, if you have a large amount of medicine, that you can get in trouble. Now, it is legalized in Denver, in California, those two cities, Seattle, and then Oregon has created, a regulated program. So a lot of people are traveling there to undergo these types of therapies because they're legal. So MDMA and psilocybin are both being studied for therapy designation. And there are some other medicines as well that they are studying, but they're not listed there. And ketamine and cannabis, which I will talk about, those are our legal psychedelic medicines that we can use now. And I will discuss that moving forward. Can you go to the next slide? So what is an entheogen? Um, Entheogen is a chemical substance, typically a plant, that is ingested to produce a non-ordinary state of consciousness. This is for religious or spiritual purposes, but I like to also say for therapeutic purposes. Um, entheogens and psychedelics, same thing. Psychedelic means mind manifesting. And there is a great quote. I think it goes, to fathom hell or soar angelic, take a pinch of psychedelic. And that is actually how the term psychedelic came to the forefront. Um, but these medicines, and I do like to say medicines, they can elicit a mystical state. And in the studies at Johns Hopkins, they talk a lot about that, with psilocybin in particular. But any of the psychedelic medicines that I am going to be talking about, they can elicit a spiritual experience within the medicine. And so that is why we call them entheogens or psychedelics. Next slide. So actually, I'm kind of glad you can't see it. At the top of this, it says the drug wheel. And I hate, I don't know, it's just a personal thing that to me, drugs, in the 80s, we saw, we had the commercials that say, this is your brain on drugs. And I don't think of psychedelic medicines or entheogenic medicines as drugs. I will say opioids, I to me, they feel like drugs because I was addicted to those. Um, but these tell you the different types of medicines, although not every single one is on here. You may have heard a lot about ayahuasca. That is a psychedelic medicine. It is a DMT, actually, medicine. If you see in the green portion, there's also some mescalines like peyote, San Pedro or Wachuma. Those are all considered psychedelics. When we talk about empathogens and MDMA, which I will discuss more, those are being studied for PTSD, specifically, I mean, a lot with veterans, but they are in their phase 3. And so hopefully MDMA will be approved soon. But they did not approve it last August when it came up for a vote. So they are still working on that. Cannabis, definitely a psychedelic. I did some training out in Denver to learn how to make a psychedelic blend of cannabis. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful medicine to help people with trauma. And of course, if you know, end of life definitely helps with spirit and with being able to eat, and to induce an appetite. And then the dissociatives, that is going to be ketamine. And so ketamine is actually available now. There kind of is a wild, wild west to how ketamine is being delivered, and I'll talk a little more about that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, next slide. Okay, so psilocybin mushrooms. Um, that is me with Paul Stamets, who is a mycology expert. If you have seen the film Fantastic Fungi, which was on Netflix, he was actually in that documentary. And he tells, beautiful, um, a beautiful story about his experience with psilocybin, and how he had a stutter before, and he had this big experience with mushrooms, and afterwards he did not stutter. So it's pretty fascinating. Maria Sabina, I like to put her in here. I don't feel like we can talk about mushrooms if we're not talking about her. And I think this, for me, is where science and spirituality meet. The mushroom is such a beautiful, beautiful medicine. And Maria Sabina, she was a healer, a Mazatec healer in Mexico. And in the late 50s, a journalist came and did a story on her in Time magazine. And it really was unfortunate, for her, for the town where she lived in, because it became swarmed with people, from the US and from all over, who wanted to come down and experience psychedelic mushrooms, and healing. And but she was a beautiful healer, self-taught by using the mushrooms herself, and learning how to sit and hold space for people, as they experience the medicine. Down in the right hand corner, those are called golden teachers, mushrooms. And uh, you know mushrooms in general, there are many different types. And oh my gosh, there's so much to know about psychedelics that it's hard for me to do a general thing. But there are many different types of psilocybin mushrooms. And I put the picture of the flower just because I love nature, and this is where I find my spirituality. And so I just love that it looks like mushrooms in the middle of the flower. Um, so, what do mushrooms do for people? And I will talk a little bit more about them, because I think that the Johns Hopkins studies, for end of life, are really more using mushrooms than any other psychedelic, for end of life. Um, they elicit a they can elicit a sense of peace, of unity, of calm, of they can elicit a mystical experience. Um, they can elicit connection, forgiveness. For me, what they did for me was, I like to say, they gave me an exorcism in fear. That's exactly what it felt like. And when we talk about the science of mushrooms, um, it's kind of hard to understand how they actually work. I mean, there are people who can give you the chemical breakdown, everything, but how does a medicine? I have more questions than I have answers, really, for you all. But how does a medicine elicit these memories of going back to my childhood and releasing fear that I'd been holding on to and self-medicating, with? So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you the kind of the science of it. So when you look at the circle on the left, this is kind of like the pathways in the brain. Um, and this is what it may look like before or after somebody has taken a placebo, a non-active medicine, versus on the right after psilocybin. Um, and it is like the pathways open up. Um, and that really is, I think, what happened for me. And it really, for me, did feel like a veil was lifted. Like I had seen the world through a lens of fear. Everything is going to hurt me. So I might as well just self medicate and not go out of my room. That's kind of how I felt. And once that opened up, um, I felt like I could connect to people for the first time, and be myself and be authentic and show up without fear. Without my experience with psilocybin, I wouldn't be here talking to you all. Definitely not. I probably wouldn't even be on camera. I would be off camera. So, you know, when we're talking about like somebody who has a fear of death, their experience is going to be, it's almost like a custom experience. It's a custom experience. These mushrooms just know right where to go. And one of the things that, in our trainings and what we're taught is that you may not have the experience that you're thinking you need in your brain, but the mushrooms will go to the place that you need healing and it will take you there. And so that is something that I am learning about mushrooms is that you trust them. And if you can let go and know that they are going to do what they need to do, um, that is really the name of the game with mushrooms. And that's why it's important to have a guide, and to have somebody with you. When I had my experience, I had a trained therapist with me. All of my experiences have been with trained therapists, supporting me and sitting with me through my pain, through the exorcism in fear. And when you hold space for somebody like that, and they have been holding in that fear for so long, it can be big emotions. It can be big releases. It can be, scary for someone who is not prepared to sit with somebody in that. Um, but that's not everything that happens in a mushroom experience. You can also have such beauty and see things in a different way. But it is not always like that. No two experiences are the same. And so that's psilocybin. Any questions on psilocybin? I do see few patients that chose psychedelics over opioids. Yes. And I put, actually, you'll see later on in the presentation, for ketamine. I have a dear colleague up in Northern Virginia who is a prescriber. She's a nurse practitioner that works with ketamine to help people with their pain. She actually works with ketamine instead of opioids. And so I can, if anybody needs her contact information, I would be more than happy to share it. Can you go to the next slide? Oh, so this is if you don't mind clicking on that, it's just a movie about, well, you'll see it, hopefully. Oh, we can't hear it. Can y'all hear it? Yeah, Crystal, we can't hear it. So
I'm
I'll
sorry, I
I'll
can give me just 1 second.
sure.
I think it's a quick fix.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have told you that I did a little
No
thing.
worries.
So this actually is about her experience with mushrooms, and so this is through the lens and through the voice of somebody who is end of life. This is the second of these movies. There is a Dosed, that's what it's called, Dosed One, and that is about somebody who has heroin addiction, I believe.
I think I'm optimizing for video sharing.
I'm sorry, I should have told you.
Okay, I am. Okay, I'm actually I think I'm gonna stop the share really quick and then go right back into the share. Um, and then that will allow me to see what I've got going on here. I know we can do this, and we're doing good on time. So I appreciate everyone's. Okay, I want to have other people share my sounds. We're going to go back to sharing the screen. I think we're good on your end. And
If this is my last year or two on Earth, I want to enjoy my life free of anxiety.
You're going to give someone magic mushrooms to help them with their anxiety. I know how that sounds.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And here I am.
Hello, welcome to the Mushroom Dispensary. You got the Big Macs, the Penis Envy. I always feel funny talking about the Penis Envy. Have some psychological, here, try the Penis Envy, that'll really help.
Don't worry, I'm not a regular drug user. I've never done it before. I've never done it since.
I talked to you yesterday, you were normal, and now you're talking about mushrooms being sacred? What happened?
Not that we can promise everybody a cure, but it does offer people an opportunity that otherwise they don't get.
When you get a cancer diagnosis, your life is automatically turned upside down. I've been struggling with whether to have surgery again or just let life run its course.
The National Cancer Institute has come out with a bold statement 5 or 6 years ago and said cannabis can kill cancer cells in the lab.
You may go into remission, you may not, but your challenge is to enjoy the moment and be grateful.
I love you more now than when we first got married, even.
We've laughed a lot. We've loved a lot. I wouldn't want to have taken this journey with anybody else.
It's completely different than anything I've ever experienced. Deeper, more meaningful, more life-changing. It was just this deep knowledge that everything is going to be all right.
just closed your whole presentation.
That's okay.
I'm horrible at that. It's okay, we were down at the movie.
Yes. You can go to the next one.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was it for mushrooms. And so the next type of entheogens are also known as empathogens, which is MDMA. And MDMA is in trial for PTSD. I know that there also have been trials of for the trials with MAPS, which is the organization that is doing those trials, that they also have had family members who have been affected by end of life or cancer. And so they have actually brought in, and hopefully if MDMA, or when MDMA gets approved for use, that can be something, a tool for family members to be able to use as well if they're experiencing some anxieties or trouble talking about the end of life anxieties and fears. And MDMA is a beautiful medicine. It is a chemical. It is not a plant substance, although it is derived from sassafras, which is a tree. But what MDMA does is it elicits empathy in people. It's kind of amazing of how it does that. And so I would like to read a review from a dear friend of mine who actually was end of life. And she had cancer, and she was able to do an MDMA study. And I would like to share what she wrote with her permission of her experience and what that journey did for her. So she wrote, "My journey enabled me to connect with a beautiful spirit animal, the jaguar, that lives within me. My jaguar helps me walk in the spaces between life and death and have a greater understanding of my long-term question: where does spirit live? Now, when I meditate, I often visualize my jaguar as a grounded, strong presence. Sometimes I am her, and sometimes she is carrying me on her belly, breathing, and I am filled with calm and strength. This was a pivotal step in my cancer journey to release and let go much of the grip of fear that my diagnosis and prognosis can bring. My journey gave me a new understanding and sense of peace of the cancer that is visiting my body." So MDMA and any entheogenic medicine really helps people to connect with that inner healing intelligence that we all have. It's kind of like, our body, if you were to get a cut, your body just knows how to heal itself. And really, that is kind of what happens when somebody takes MDMA. That spirit or soul kind of arrives and allows them to see or hear or understand how to heal themselves. And so that is what MDMA does. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is what it looks like in the trials, or, and really this is most psychedelic therapies, what they will look like. People will be wearing a mask. They will have music set based on the medicine that they're taking. And they will have a therapist there who, is there if there are scary times, if there are beautiful times. So this is typically what a therapy session would look like. The graphic on the left is from MAPS, and they are just showing the phase 3 trial results And you can see that 67% of participants no longer had PTSD after 3 sessions. So it's not that you take a medicine and you're healed. That's not how any of this really works. But it's insights. And as you have insights and you grow and your network in your brain is healing and making new pathways, you have more capacity to heal and to find calm and find peace and find your center. Okay, next slide. So ketamine, that is our psychedelic that is legal. Ketamine is an anesthetic. And so it has been used in emergency rooms. You may have had it if you have gone to the dentist. It's pretty safe to use in all ages. A lot of people hear ketamine and they think of a horse tranquilizer. That's what most people think of when they think of ketamine. But it actually, at lower doses, can elicit beautiful healing, beautiful comfort, and also create new neural pathways in the brain. Ketamine should be done along with therapy. Of course, all of these medicines should be, but ketamine especially, there is a certain window of time when there is more openness for change. And that's why I had said it's kind of a wild, wild west out there for ketamine right now. You can find IV clinics run by anesthesiologists. You can find IV clinics run by therapists, or, there's Mind Bloom or other companies that will mail you ketamine to your house. And that would be an oral ketamine. There are many different ways to take ketamine, IV injection in the arm, or the lozenges, which is what a lot of people use at home, or in a therapist's office. And as I said, I have a dear colleague, if you can go to the next slide, who is a nurse. Oh, I forgot. So this is actually it's a staged photo with my friend, but this is what a ketamine experience looks like. For some people, of course, consent and touch and all of those things are discussed beforehand. But this is what a ketamine experience would look like if I was holding space for someone who needed extra support. But ketamine is used for anxiety, depression, PTSD, chronic pain, OCD, and addiction. What is not on there is the end of life anxieties, as well as I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was thinking mainly of what my colleague offers. So if you'll go to the next slide, this, and you'll get a copy of these slides, but in the New York Times, they did a really great article on psychedelics for end of life. And my colleague, Diane Hindell, is the nurse practitioner who works, in palliative care and works with oral ketamine solution for clients who may not want to use opioids, so that they can be present and aware and actually enjoy life, and not be groggy from the side effects of opioids. So it's a great article, and I just felt like I needed to include it. Can you go to the next slide? And I think this is the last one, is cannabis. I think cannabis sometimes gets a bad rap. Um, but I think when we're talking about end of life and just getting a deeper understanding of how cannabis can be used as a psychedelic and to elicit spirituality and healing in someone and just feeling connected and at ease and at peace, it can be a beautiful, beautiful medicine. What I appreciate about cannabis is that, and what I learned in my psychedelic cannabis course is that it can mimic some of these medicines that are illegal, or not available to people readily right now. So when you use it in a blend and you guide somebody in an experience with cannabis, it can really almost be like you are having a mushroom journey or an MDMA journey. It can elicit some of the same things: the empathy, the feeling of connectedness, awe, and just allow your defenses to soften so that you can start to understand how you can make meaningful change, or not worry so much, really. So I think that was the last one. I think the next slide is resources. Um, so I put in there the Johns Hopkins psychedelic group, MAPS. So that's the organization that does the study of MDMA. And then I also put in there Third Wave. That is a website that you can go to. There is a tab on there that says Learn, and it tells you about all the different types of psychedelics, what they do, how they feel. It just gives you a good overview of all the different things that are out there. And then I always, because I hold integration sessions for people who have had psychedelic experiences, as a place to come and discuss them and get clarity and understanding and just share their experience. And so I always like to share this fireside project support line, because there will be people who come to my meetings. They're free, and they may have the idea of they want to go out and purchase some medicine and do a journey on their own. And this support line offers free phone support if somebody is having a journey or an experience on a medicine and they need some help. They need support. I do not recommend anybody do that without somebody sitting with them. And even then, I don't really recommend it. But if that were to happen, this is somewhere to call instead of 911 or going to an emergency room, although you should if you're, feel like you're unsafe. But it's a great, great support line. And they have specialists in all the medicines. They will ask you, do you have, certain things that are important to you? Or what medicine have you taken? And they're trained and volunteers, and it's a beautiful support.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for everything that you have shared with us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And if there are any questions or comments, our remaining guests can feel welcome to come off of mute. We did have a couple of guests who were popping in and out with what appears to be some sort of issue, connection issue, but there were a couple of questions that came through the chat to me. And I'm going to do my best to ask these questions only because I don't 100% know. So the one said price and legitimacy of trainers. So I assume that that means how do we choose a trainer or a therapist to guide us? Where do people look, whether it is as doulas who are interested in experiencing this for ourselves or clients that are expressing interest? How do we know who to go to and what to look for?
Well, definitely I would look for somebody who is trained, who has had some training. With ketamine clinics in particular, if you are going out and not to put any of these down, because ketamine, the medicine itself, is wonderful, but if it's an anesthesiologist giving ketamine, they're not going to be supporting the spiritual side of somebody necessarily. They may not have therapists, and I would never give ketamine and then leave somebody. It's just it's against my moral obligation, and I was not trained that way. So I am a member of the Ketamine Psychotherapy Associates group. And that is a group, a nationwide group of folks who have been trained under Dr. Phil Wolfson, or who are members of this group, where we attend regular meetings, we discuss cases, we continue our education. I've done training with him twice, and that is where Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and his wife where they're talking about somatic therapy. Not just psychedelic therapy is important, but to have somebody who may have awareness of somatic therapy or internal family systems is another type of therapy that really helps people when working with psychedelics. But as far as finding and vetting somebody is knowing, have they done psychedelic training? Now in Oregon, it's a mandate. Only the people who have been trained can sit for somebody and serve these medicines to people. Of course, all studies at Johns Hopkins, or there are studies at really, I think all the higher learning centers, you will find that they are doing some type of psychedelic study. And they are going to have a lot of training. On the MAPS website, you can find people who have been trained in the MDMA therapeutic sense. So really, I think that would be where I would go if I was looking for someone, to work with, or to get education, or to find out where can I send somebody, or you can ask me because really I have been doing this for 4 years now, and so the web is wide. I've done a lot of trainings, and I went to the psychedelic science conference. They hold them every 2 years, and you meet connections like the nurse who I recommend up in Northern Virginia, who works beautifully with ketamine. We connect. The psychedelic world is pretty small. But it's growing. And so I do know most of the people and the people who have been trained, I will say. I would be very cautious at somebody who doesn't tell you their qualifications, or where have you been trained. I mean, these are things that I would ask. How many people have you sat for? what can you show me some of your, can you connect me with somebody who you've worked with? Those are big things that I have always, felt very important for somebody who wants to come and work with me, because safety, a sense of safety and security, and a trusting relationship with the person who you're working with is ideal. And not just ideal, it is necessary. It's just like you as being a doula. I mean, it is an honor to go and sit for somebody and to work with somebody and to help them find the better versions of themselves. Help them find, it's not us doing it, but because we provide the safety and the security and the compassion, that is paramount to building a trusting relationship and somebody having a good experience with medicine.
Thank you. Alicia just put in contact or in the chat, how do we get in touch with you? So I've got your email address, and I don't know if you want to put those in the chat really quick. They also will be included for everybody watching the recording in the email that's coming out with this link in it. So we'll be including all of the resources that were discussed here. And then the other question that had been sent to me is, you mentioned that not all medicine is good for each person. What is your opinion or your advice for people that have either had previous experience with addiction or just a previous bad experience with these medicines in question? How do we know if this is for us or our clients? How do we know if what we were doing was just an addiction or just a kid who is, experimenting versus medicinal impact?
Yes. Good question. So I actually, I enjoy this question because I've worked with people who have gone to Amsterdam. And, we do these things. There's nothing wrong with taking these medicines recreationally if that is somebody's, thing. A lot of people take these medicines and go to concerts and have a beautiful experience. And that's a recreational use of the medicine. And that's not wrong. It's addiction of using it compulsively to escape. I really do believe it's the intentionality of using the medicine. And that's the difference between abuse and using it therapeutically. So that's another thing to bring up when you are talking to somebody who is going to guide you, no matter if it's ketamine, cannabis, MDMA, psilocybin. You want to have an intention for using the medicine if you're doing this therapeutically. And so if somebody is coming and has had a history of substance abuse, they should have some sober time before they start to do this type of therapy. And you should have a team. It shouldn't be, oh, I'm just going to go do this and I'm going to, heal myself. It doesn't work like that. Like, you really should have your therapist on board, a guide, family, talk about, doing this type of work. But the question about having a negative experience with the medicine. So I say there are no bad trips. There are difficult trips. And I have worked with people who had very difficult trips. When I brought up Amsterdam, people can go there and you can buy mushrooms and you just take them, and then you can walk around Amsterdam. And, who knows what's going to happen with that medicine. It can be unpredictable. And that is why I like to do a lot of harm reduction education with people, to be in a safe space. Setting where you are makes a big difference when you're doing a journey, and your mindset. So we say set and setting are very important. And so, having an experience in a bad setting in the past, of course, it can elicit fear in somebody who wants to maybe come back and heal from that experience, or heal from traumas and use medicine. And so again, it's that building of safety, exploring what happened in that experience for somebody, and knowing when they're ready. So that goes back to mindset of, yes, I'm ready, or no, I'm not, and being okay with whatever decision, and knowing that that can change. But if you would have asked me about my first experience with medicine, I would have told you it was bad. I would have said it was horrible, and why did I do this? But that would have been 2 days after, or I'm sorry, like the day of, I would have said, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But the next day, when I felt a weight off, it felt like I had lost 20 pounds. But that fear, that was heavy to carry around with me all those years. So, it takes time to process experiences and integrate them into your life. And so that's why I say, you take the medicine, that begins your journey. That isn't the cure. It's the beginning of your journey to a different way of being and living and seeing through these eyes and in the world, and presenting yourself in that way.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. That makes so much sense.
Sure.
We are doing pretty good on time. I'm trying not to, so those were the two that had been sent to me. And then my personal question is, so what is what is the process? Like, this isn't like, we're not just calling you up and saying, hey, let's get high. So when somebody wants to start this journey, or they're interested in knowing if it's right for them, and then they reach out to you, like, what is the process from beginning to beginning of the journey?
Well, for anybody who is going to be using psychedelic medicines, it is like a discovery call of working, are we a good fit to work together? What is your intention? So that is typically when I would work with anybody. I would do about a 30 to 45-minute phone call of, why are you wanting to do this? I ask a few basic questions about your medical history and what medicines you're on. Different medicines can interact with psychedelic medicines in different ways. The good thing about ketamine is that it's okay for you to be on SSRIs, or medication for depression. You can have ketamine or cannabis while you're on those medicines. But for anybody who's going through trials or doing other things, we're studying it more and more about the how medicines affect a journey, especially with psilocybin. But I know a lot of the a lot of the studies are not taking people on SSRIs because they affect the way that the medicine works. And so I have heard people, there's also, some concern about serotonin syndrome when you have too much serotonin in your system, and it can cause some emergency problems. So if you have a flood of serotonin, which is what happens when you take psilocybin or MDMA, that can happen. So those studies are not sometimes making people wean off of their SSRIs, to be able to do that. So I ask those questions. I ask, a little bit about your history. Have you ever taken medicine before? Those types of things. And see if I'm a good fit. I may not be a good fit for everyone. I actually do, refer people out a lot, because there are so many practitioners out there that do work in different ways. There's a practitioner that I love who does breath work. Breath work actually is a psychedelic on its own if done correctly. It's kind of amazing that just breathing can elicit a psychedelic or a spiritual experience. So, I may refer people out. Once we decide that we're going to work together, with ketamine, I would do a referral to a physician who oversees that portion. There is a payment to him when it comes to that. And then we kind of make a plan or a commitment of how we're going to work together. I typically will request at least 2 meetings before you ever take medicine, and that's at the minimum. And that is for me to get to know your history, your all about you. Where did you grow up? Where, who do you love? Who do you not love? What's important to you? I will ask about religion because that may be important. And I do bring in a spiritual aspect in that when we work with the medicine and you come in, I ask for people to make an altar for themselves based on their intention. And so, that is how I personally guide people. Because I think it helps as you're preparing to do this very sacred work within yourself. It becomes an anchor almost, or a guide for that journey. And so I help people to create that. But we build that safety and that trust and that rapport and understanding of, are you okay with being touched? Do you not want to be touched? I don't like anything on my ears, so I can't have, big earphones so we talk about a lot of different things beforehand. And some people may need longer, especially somebody who's had a bad experience with medicine in the past. And then you do your journey work. And, I stay with somebody during a journey and just support them and guide them through. And then we make sense of what happens after that experience. And to give an example of a ketamine journey of somebody who was highly depressed, a teenager actually, as they were coming out, the medicine and their beautiful brain created a story. And it was a story of how to heal themselves. And it had characters in it. And it was fabulous, that this kid, I say kid, he's a teenager. He's probably an adult now because it's been a while, but I shouldn't say kid, but you know, he had such an imaginative brain, an imaginative spirit that it guided him in how to come out of this depression. And so we just talk about it. And in talking about it, it elicits the change factors. And that really is what happens on the other side of the journey. And that's how I say that's how the change happens. And that's why psychedelic medicines work, because they help you to create your healing. How long does a journey typically last? So with ketamine is a quick thing. It's about an hour. It's just 45 minutes to an hour. Some people an hour and 15 minutes. When people do MDMA or psilocybin, the medicine portion lasts about 4 to 6 hours. But depending on somebody's metabolism, can last up to 12. So it just depends on the way that your body reacts to the medicine. The other kind of strange thing about these medicines is that they don't really work on weight like most medicines do. It really is kind of a sensitivity and tolerance. So, you know, that is the, it's different than any other medication. And it is. And that's why I say, you know, especially when we're working with ketamine, we have to kind of commit to a certain amount of experiences. Because even with cannabis, ketamine, with John Hopkins and psilocybin, it's start lower and then go higher, because we can always add, you know, medicine, but we cannot take it away once it's in. Yeah.
And then right above that, Regan had asked, is your work mostly with ketamine?
So I do work mainly with ketamine and cannabis, but you know, I have been trained with the other medicines as well. But legally, yes, I just work with ketamine and cannabis. Now there are, as far as, you know, being able to refer someone or to have experiences with those other medicines, of course, I can always refer you to the studies. And it is sad that a lot of people do have to go out of country to experience these other medicines, but there are options. What is upsetting to me is that they're really only going to be available to people who can afford it. Who can afford to go out of the country. I certainly wouldn't have been able to, you know, but people do go to Costa Rica, Peru, you know, but we are finding that there are a lot of churches and religious organizations that are offering different medicines across the US that are opening and available to people.
Wow. That's enlightening at the very least to have that kind of support from that community. So again, I want to thank you so much for all of your time this evening. That is all of the questions in the chat. And I also want to let everybody know that not only is Tiffany's email address in the chat, it'll be included in the link that we send out. So if there were any questions that were not covered this evening, you will know exactly how to get in touch with her. So thank you so much, Tiffany. We hope to see you around. We've got some regional meetups getting planned. I'm sure that I definitely know of a few people who are excited to have you on the calendar. They would love to meet you in person, kind of in between us and the Richmond area. So we will keep you posted on when we are meeting together again. And if that is it for all of us here this evening, we are gonna sign off and thank you again so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. Bye.